Greetings, lasses and chaps. Welcome to Mystery Maven. Today we shall peruse a thrilling tale. The Mystery of the Blue Train is a work of detective fiction by British writer Agatha Christie, first published in the United Kingdom by William Collins and Sons on 29 March 1928, and in the United States by Dodd, Mead and Company later in the same year. So let's hie ourselves to the fun. The Mystery of the Blue Train by Agatha Christie. 1. The Man with the White Hair. It was close on midnight when a man crossed the Place de la Concorde. In spite of the handsome fur coat which garbed his meagre form, there was something essentially weak and paltry about him. A little man with a face like a rat. A man, one would say, who could never play a conspicuous part or rise to prominence in any sphere. And yet, in leaping to such a conclusion, an onlooker would have been wrong. For this man, negligible and inconspicuous as he seemed, played a prominent part in the destiny of the world. In an empire where rats ruled, he was the king of the rats. Even now, an embassy awaited his return. But he had business to do first, business of which the embassy was not officially cognizant. His face gleamed white and sharp in the moonlight. There was the least hint of a curve in the thin nose. His father had been a Polish Jew, a journeyman tailor. It was business such as his father would have loved that took him abroad tonight. He came to the Seine, crossed it, and entered one of the less reputable quarters of Paris. Here he stopped before a tall, dilapidated house and made his way up to an apartment on the 4th floor. He had barely time to knock before the door was opened by a woman who had evidently been awaiting his arrival. She gave him no greeting, but helped him off with his overcoat and then led the way into the tawdrily furnished sitting room. The electric light was shaded with dirty pink festoons, and it softened, but could not disguise, the girl's face with its mask of crude paint. Could not disguise either the broad Mongolian cast of her countenance. There was no doubt of Olga Demirov's profession, nor of her nationality. "All is well, little one. All is well, Boris Ivanovitch." He nodded, murmuring, "I do not think I have been followed." But there was anxiety in his tone. He went to the window, drawing the curtains aside slightly and peering carefully out. He started away violently. "There are 2 men on the opposite pavement. It looks to me—" He broke off and began gnawing at his nails, a habit he had when anxious. The Russian girl was shaking her head with a slow, reassuring action. "They were here before you came. All the same, it looks to me as though they were watching this house." "Possibly," she admitted indifferently. "But then, what of it? Even if they know it will not be you, they will follow from here." A thin, cruel smile came to his lips. "No," he admitted, "that is true." He mused for a minute or two and then observed, "This damned American, he can look after himself as well as anybody." "I suppose so." He went again to the window. "Tough customers," he muttered with a chuckle. "Known to the police, I fear. Well, well, I wish Brother Apache good hunting." Olga Demirov shook her head. "If the American is the kind of man they say he is, it will take more than a couple of cowardly Apaches to get the better of him." She paused. "I wonder? Well, nothing. Only twice this evening a man has passed along this street, a man with white hair." "What of it?" "This." As he passed those 2 men, he dropped his glove. One of them picked it up and returned it to him. A threadbare device. "You mean that the white-haired man is their employer?" "Something of the kind." The Russian looked alarmed and uneasy. "You are sure the parcel is safe? It has not been tampered with? There has been too much talk?" "Much too much talk." He gnawed his nails again. "Judge for yourself." She bent to the fireplace, deftly removing the coals. Underneath, from amongst the crumpled balls of newspaper, she selected from the very middle an oblong package wrapped round with grimy newspaper and handed it to the man. "Ingenious," he said, with a nod of approval. "The apartment has been searched twice. The mattress on my bed was ripped open." "It is as I said," he muttered. "There has been too much talk. This haggling over the price. It was a mistake." He had unwrapped the newspaper. Inside was a small brown paper parcel. This, in turn, he unwrapped, verified the contents, and quickly wrapped it up once more. As he did so, an electric bell rang sharply. "The American is punctual," said Olga with a glance at the clock. She left the room. In a minute she returned, ushering in a stranger, a big, broad-shouldered man whose transatlantic origin was evident. His keen glance went from one to the other. "M. Krasnin?" he inquired politely. "I am he," said Boris. "I must apologize for the unconventionality of this meeting place, but secrecy is urgent. I cannot afford to be connected with this business in any way." "Is that so?" said the American politely. "I have your word, have I not, that no details of this transaction will be made public? That is one of the conditions of sale." The American nodded. "That has already been agreed upon," he said indifferently. "Now, perhaps, you will produce the goods." "You have the money in notes?" "Yes," replied the other. He did not, however, make any attempt to produce it. After a moment's hesitation, Krasnin gestured towards the small parcel on the table. The American took it up and unrolled the wrapping paper. The contents he took over to a small electric lamp and submitted them to a very thorough examination. Satisfied, he drew from his pocket a thick leather wallet and extracted from it a wad of notes. These he handed to the Russian, who counted them carefully. "All right. I thank you, monsieur. Everything is correct." "Ah," said the other. He slipped the brown paper parcel negligently into his pocket. He bowed to Olga. "Good evening, mademoiselle. Good evening, Ma Krasnin." He went out, shutting the door behind him. The eyes of the two in the room met. The man passed his tongue over his dry lips. "I wonder, will he ever get back to his hotel?" he muttered. By common accord, they both turned to the window. They were just in time to see the American emerge into the street below. He turned to the left and marched along at a good pace, without once turning his head. Two shadows stole from a doorway and followed noiselessly. Pursuers and pursued vanished into the night. Olga Demirov spoke. "He will get back safely," she said. "You need not fear or hope, whichever it is." "Why do you think he will be safe?" asked Krasnin curiously. "A man who has made as much money as he has could not possibly be a fool," said Olga. "And talking of money," she looked significantly at Krasnin. "Eh? My share, Boris Ivanovitch." With some reluctance, Krasnin handed over 2 of the notes. She nodded her thanks with a complete lack of emotion and tucked them away in her stocking. "That is good," she remarked with satisfaction. He looked at her curiously. "You have no regrets, Olga Vassilovna. Regrets? For what?" "For what has been in your keeping. There are women, most women, I believe, who go mad over such things." She nodded reflectively. "Yes, you speak truth there. Most women have that madness. I have not. I wonder now," she broke off. "Well?" asked the other curiously. "The American will be safe with them. Yes, I am sure of that. But afterwards, eh? What are you thinking of? He will give them, of course, to some woman," said Olga thoughtfully. "I wonder what will happen then." She shook herself impatiently and went over to the window. Suddenly she uttered an exclamation and called to her companion. "See, he is going down the street now, the man I mean." They both gazed down together. A slim, elegant figure was progressing along at a leisurely pace. He wore an opera hat and a cloak. As he passed a street lamp, the light illumined a thatch of thick white hair. Le Marquis. The man with the white hair continued on his course, unhurried and seemingly indifferent to his surroundings. He took a side, turning to the right and another one to the left. Now and then he hummed a little air to himself. Suddenly he stopped dead and listened intently. He had heard a certain sound. It might have been the bursting of a tire, or it might have been a shot. A curious smile played round his lips for a minute. Then he resumed his leisurely walk. On turning a corner, he came upon a scene of some activity. A representative of the law was making notes in a pocketbook, and 1 or 2 late passers-by had collected on the spot. To one of these, the man with the white hair made a polite request for information. "Something has been happening, yes?" "Mais oui, monsieur." 2 Apaches set upon an elderly American gentleman. "They did him no injury?" "No, indeed." Laughed. The American, he had a revolver in his pocket, and before they could attack him, he fired shots so closely round them that they took alarm and fled. The police, as usual, arrived too late. "Ah," said the inquirer. He displayed no emotion of any kind. Placidly and unconcernedly he resumed his nocturnal strolling. Presently he crossed the Seine and came into the richer areas of the city. It was some 20 minutes later that he came to a stop before a certain house in a quiet but aristocratic thoroughfare. The shop, for shop it was a restrained and unpretentious one. T. Papopoulos, dealer in antiques, was so known to fame that he needed no advertisement, and indeed most of his business was not done over a counter. Mer Papopoulos had a very handsome apartment of his own overlooking the Champs-Élysées, and it might reasonably be supposed that he would have been found there and not at his place of business at such an hour, but the man with the white hair seemed confident of success as he pressed the obscurely placed bell, having first given a quick glance up and down the deserted street. His confidence was not misplaced. The door opened and a man stood in the aperture. He wore gold rings in his ears, and was of a swarthy cast of countenance. "Good evening," said the stranger. "Your master is within?" "The master is here, but he does not see chance visitors at this time of night," growled the other. "I think he will see me. Tell him that his friend M. le Marquis is here." The man opened the door a little wider, and allowed the visitor to enter. The man who gave his name as M. le Marquis had shielded his face with his hand as he spoke. When the manservant returned with the information that M. Papopoulos would be pleased to receive the visitor, a further change had taken place in the stranger's appearance. The manservant must have been very unobservant, or very well trained, for he betrayed no surprise at the small black satin mask which hid the other's features. Leading the way to a door at the end of the hall, he opened it and announced in a respectful murmur, "M. le Marquis." The figure which rose to receive this strange guest was an imposing one. There was something venerable and patriarchal about M. Papopoulos. He had a high domed forehead and a beautiful white beard. His manner had in it something ecclesiastical and benign. "My dear friend," said M. Papopoulos. He spoke in French, and his tones were rich and unctuous. "I must apologize," said the visitor, "for the lateness of the hour." "Not at all, not at all," said M. Papopoulos. "An interesting time of night." "You have had, perhaps, an interesting evening." "Not personally," said M. le Marquis. "Not personally," repeated M. Papopoulos. "No, no, of course not." "And there is news, eh?" He cast a sharp glance sideways at the other, a glance that was not ecclesiastical or benign in the least. "There is no news." "The attempt failed. I hardly expected anything else." "Quite so," said M. Papopoulos. "Anything crude?" He waved his hand to express his intense distaste for crudity in any form. There was indeed nothing crude about M. Papopoulos, nor about the goods he handled. He was well known in most European courts, and kings called him Demetrius in a friendly manner. He had the reputation for the most exquisite discretion. That, together with the nobility of his aspect, had carried him through several very questionable transactions. "The direct attack," said M. Papopoulos. He shook his head. "It answers sometimes, but very seldom." The other shrugged his shoulders. "It saves time," he remarked, "and to fail costs nothing, or next to nothing. The other plan will not fail." "Ah," said M. Papopoulos, looking at him keenly. The other nodded slowly. "I have great confidence in your, reputation," said the antique dealer. M. le Marquis smiled gently. "I think I may say," he murmured, "that your confidence will not be misplaced." "You have unique opportunities," said the other, with a note of envy in his voice. "I make them," said M. le Marquis. He rose and took up the cloak which he had thrown carelessly on the back of a chair. "I will keep you informed, M. Papopoulos, through the usual channels, but there must be no hitch in your arrangements." M. Papopoulos was pained. "There is never a hitch in my arrangements," he complained. The other smiled, and, without any further word of adieu, he left the room, closing the door behind him. M. Papopoulos remained in thought for a moment, stroking his venerable white beard, and then moved across to a second door which opened inwards. As he turned the handle, a young woman, who only too clearly had been leaning against it with her ear to the keyhole, stumbled headlong into the room. M. Papopoulos displayed neither surprise nor concern. It was evidently all quite natural to him. "Well, Zia?" he asked. "I did not hear him go," explained Zia. She was a handsome young woman, built on Juno-esque lines, with dark, flashing eyes, and such a general air of resemblance to M. Papopoulos that it was easy to see they were father and daughter. "It is annoying," she continued vexedly, "that one cannot see through a keyhole and hear through it at the same time." "It has often annoyed me," said M. Popopoulos with great simplicity. "So that is M. le Marquis," said Zia slowly. "Does he always wear a mask, father?" "Always." There was a pause. "It is the rubies, I suppose?" asked Zia. Her father nodded. "What do you think, my little one?" he inquired, with a hint of amusement in his beady black eyes. "Of me, le Marquis?" "Yes." "I think," said Zia slowly, "that it is a very rare thing to find a well-bred Englishman who speaks French as well as that." "Ah," said M. Popopoulos, "so that is what you think." As usual, he did not commit himself, but he regarded Zia with benign approval. "I thought too," said Zia, "that his head was an odd shape." "Massive," said her father, "a trifle massive. But then that effect is always created by a wig." They both looked at each other and smiled. Gree, Port of Fire. Rufus Van Alden passed through the revolving doors of the Savoy and walked to the reception desk. The desk clerk smiled a respectful greeting. "Pleased to see you back again, Mr. Van Alden," he said. The American millionaire nodded his head in a casual greeting. "Everything all right?" he asked. "Yes, sir." "Major Knighton is upstairs in the suite now." Van Alden nodded again. "Any mail?" he vouchsafed. "They have all been sent up, Mr. Van Alden." "Oh, wait a minute." He dived into a pigeonhole and produced a letter. "Just come this minute," he explained. Rufus Van Alden took the letter from him, and as he saw the handwriting, a woman's flowing hand, his face was suddenly transformed. The harsh contours of it softened, and the hard line of his mouth relaxed. He looked a different man. He walked across to the lift with the letter in his hand and the smile still on his lips. In the drawing-room of his suite, a young man was sitting at a desk, nimbly sorting correspondence with the ease born of long practice. He sprang up as Van Alden entered. "Hello, Knighton. Glad to see you back, sir. Had a good time?" "So-so," said the millionaire unemotionally. "Paris is rather a one-horse city nowadays. Still, I got what I went over for." He smiled to himself rather grimly. "You usually do, I believe," said the secretary, laughing. "That's so," agreed the other. He spoke in a matter-of-fact manner, as one stating a well-known fact. Throwing off his heavy overcoat, he advanced to the desk. "Anything urgent?" "I don't think so, sir. Mostly the usual stuff. I have not quite finished sorting it out." Van Alden nodded briefly. He was a man who seldom expressed either blame or praise. His methods with those he employed were simple. He gave them a fair trial and dismissed promptly those who were inefficient. His selections of people were unconventional. Knighton, for instance. He had met casually at a Swiss resort 2 months previously. He had approved of the fellow, looked up his war record, and found in it the explanation of the limp with which he walked. Knighton had made no secret of the fact that he was looking for a job, and indeed diffidently asked the millionaire if he knew of any available post. Van Alden remembered, with a grim smile of amusement, the young man's complete astonishment when he had been offered the post of secretary to the great man himself. But I have no experience of business," he had stammered. "That doesn't matter a cuss," Van Alden had replied. "I have got 3 secretaries already to attend to that kind of thing. But I am likely to be in England for the next 6 months, and I want an Englishman who, well, knows the ropes and can attend to the social side of things for me." So far, Van Alden had found his judgment confirmed. Knighton had proved quick, intelligent, and resourceful, and he had a distinct charm of manner. The secretary indicated 3 or 4 letters placed by themselves on the top of the desk. "It might perhaps be as well, sir, if you glanced at these," he suggested. "The top one is about the Colton agreement." But Rufus Van Alden held up a protesting hand. "I am not going to look at a derned thing tonight," he declared. "They can all wait till the morning. Except this one," he added, looking down at the letter he held in his hand, and again that strange transforming smile stole over his face. Richard Knighton smiled sympathetically. "Mrs. Kettering," he murmured. "She rang up yesterday and today. She seems very anxious to see you at once, sir." "Does she now?" The smile faded from the millionaire's face. He ripped open the envelope which he held in his hand and took out the enclosed sheet. As he read it, his face darkened, his mouth set grimly in the line which Wall Street knew so well, and his brows knit themselves ominously. Knighton turned tactfully away, and went on opening letters and sorting them. A muttered oath escaped the millionaire, and his clenched fist hit the table sharply. "I'll not stand for this," he muttered to himself. "Poor little girl. It's a good thing she has her old father behind her." He walked up and down the room for some minutes, his brows drawn together in a scowl. Knighton still bent assiduously over the desk. Suddenly Van Alden came to an abrupt halt. He took up his overcoat from the chair where he had thrown it. "Are you going out again, sir?" "Yes, I'm going round to see my daughter. If Colton's people ring up—" "Tell them to go to the devil," said Van Alden. "Very well," said the secretary unemotionally. Van Alden had his overcoat on by now. Cramming his hat upon his head, he went towards the door. He paused with his hand upon the handle. "You are a good fellow, Knighton," he said. "You don't worry me when I am rattled." Knighton smiled a little, but made no reply. "Ruth is my only child," said Van Alden, "and there is no one on this earth who knows quite what she means to me." A faint smile irradiated his face. He slipped his hand into his pocket. "Care to see something, Knighton?" He came back towards the secretary. From his pocket he drew out a parcel carelessly wrapped in brown paper. He tossed off the wrapping and disclosed a big, shabby, red velvet case. In the centre of it were some twisted initials surmounted by a crown. He snapped the case open, and the secretary drew in his breath sharply. Against the slightly dingy white of the interior, the stones glowed like blood. "My God, sir," said Knighton. "Are they? Are they real?" Van Alden laughed a quiet little cackle of amusement. "I don't wonder at your asking that. Amongst these rubies are the 3 largest in the world. Catherine of Russia wore them, Knighton. That centre one there is known as Heart of Fire. It's perfect, not a flaw in it. But," the secretary murmured, "they must be worth a fortune." $400,000 or $500,000, said Van Alden nonchalantly, "and that is apart from the historical interest." "And you carry them about, like that, loose in your pocket?" Van Alden laughed amusedly. "I guess so. You see, they are my little present for Ruthie." The secretary smiled discreetly. "I can understand now Mrs. Kettering's anxiety over the telephone," he murmured. But Van Alden shook his head. The hard look returned to his face. "You are wrong there," he said. "She doesn't know about these. They are my little surprise for her." He shut the case and began slowly to wrap it up again. "It's a hard thing, Knighton," he said, "how little one can do for those one loves. I can buy a good portion of the earth for Ruth, if it would be any use to her, but it isn't. I can hang these things round her neck and give her a moment or two's pleasure, maybe, but—" He shook his head. "When a woman is not happy in her home—" He left the sentence unfinished. The secretary nodded discreetly. He knew, none better, the reputation of the Hon. Derek Kettering. Van Alden sighed. Slipping the parcel back in his coat pocket, he nodded to Knighton and left the room. Or, in Curzon Street. The Hon. Mrs. Derek Kettering lived in Curzon Street. The butler who opened the door recognized Rufus Van Alden at once and permitted himself a discreet smile of greeting. He led the way upstairs to the big double drawing-room on the first floor. A woman who was sitting by the window started up with a cry. "Why, Dad, if that isn't too good for anything. I've been telephoning Major Knighton all day to try and get hold of you, but he couldn't say for sure when you were expected back." Ruth Kettering was 28 years of age. Without being beautiful, or in the real sense of the word even pretty, she was striking-looking because of her colouring. Van Alden had been called carrots and ginger in his time, and Ruth's hair was almost pure auburn. With it went dark eyes and very black lashes, the effect somewhat enhanced by art. She was tall and slender and moved well. At a careless glance, it was the face of a Raphael Madonna. Only if one looked closely did one perceive the same line of jaw and chin as in Van Alden's face, bespeaking the same hardness and determination. It suited the man, but suited the woman less well. From her childhood upward, Ruth Van Alden had been accustomed to having her own way, and anyone who had ever stood up against her soon realized that Rufus Van Alden's daughter never gave in. "Knighton told me you'd phoned him," said Van Alden. "I only got back from Paris half an hour ago. What's all this about, Derek?" Ruth Kettering flushed angrily. "It's unspeakable. It's beyond all limits, she cried. He doesn't seem to listen to anything I say. There was bewilderment as well as anger in her voice. He'll listen to me, said the millionaire grimly. Ruth went on. I've hardly seen him for the last month. He goes about everywhere with that woman. With what woman, Mirelle? She dances at the Parthenon, you know. Van Alden nodded. I was down at Lecombray last week. I spoke to Lord Lecombray. He was awfully sweet to me, sympathised entirely. He said he'd give Derek a good talking to. Ah, said Van Alden. What do you mean by, ah, Dad? Just what you think I mean, Ruthie. Poor old Lecombray is a washout. Of course he sympathised with you. Of course he tried to soothe you down. Having got his son and heir married to the daughter of one of the richest men in the States, he naturally doesn't want to mess the thing up. But he's got one foot in the grave already, everyone knows that, and anything he may say will cut darned little ice with Derek. Can't you do anything, Dad? Urged Ruth after a minute or two. I might, said the millionaire. He waited a second reflectively, and then went on. There are several things I might do, but there's only one that will be any real good. How much pluck have you got, Ruthie? She stared at him. He nodded back at her. I mean, just what I say. Have you got the grit to admit to all the world that you've made a mistake? There's only one way out of this mess, Ruthie. Cut your losses and start afresh. You mean divorce? Divorce. Van Alden smiled dryly. You say that word, Ruth, as though you'd never heard it before. And yet your friends are doing it all round you every day. Oh, I know that. But... She stopped, biting her lip. Her father nodded comprehendingly. I know, Ruth. You're like me. You can't bear to let go. But I've learnt, and you've got to learn, that there are times when it's the only way. I might find ways of whistling Derek back to you, but it would all come to the same in the end. He's no good, Ruth. He's rotten through and through. And mind you, I blame myself for ever letting you marry him. But you were kind of set on having him, and he seemed in earnest about turning over a new leaf, and well, I'd crossed you once, honey. He did not look at her as he said the last words. Had he done so, he might have seen the swift colour that came up in her face. You did, she said in a hard voice. I was too darned soft-hearted to do it a second time. I can't tell you how I wish I had, though. You've led a poor kind of life for the last few years, Ruth. It has not been very agreeable, agreed Mrs. Kettering. That's why I say to you that this thing has got to stop. He brought his hand down with a bang on the table. You may have a hankering after the fellow still. Cut it out. Face facts. Derek Kettering married you for your money. That's all there is to it. Get rid of him, Ruth. Ruth Kettering looked down at the ground for some moments, then she said without raising her head, Supposing he doesn't consent? Van Alden looked at her in astonishment. He won't have a say in the matter. She flushed and bit her lip. No, of course not. I only meant... She stopped. Her father eyed her keenly. What did you mean? I meant... She paused, choosing her words carefully. He mayn't take it lying down. The millionaire's chin shot out grimly. You mean he'll fight the case? Let him, but, as a matter of fact, you're wrong. He won't fight. Any solicitor he consults will tell him he hasn't a leg to stand upon. You don't think... She hesitated. I mean, out of sheer spite against me. He might. Try to make it awkward. Her father looked at her in some astonishment. Fight the case, you mean? He shook his head. Very unlikely. You see, he would have to have something to go upon. Mrs. Kettering did not answer. Van Alden looked at her sharply. Come, Ruth, out with it. There's something troubling you. What is it? Nothing at all. But her voice was unconvincing. You were dreading the publicity, eh? Is that it? You leave it to me. I'll put the whole thing through so smoothly that there will be no fuss at all. Very well, Dad, if you really think it's the best thing to be done. Got a fancy for the fellow still, Ruth, is that it? No. The word came with no uncertain emphasis. Van Alden seemed satisfied. He patted his daughter on the shoulder. It will be all right, little girl. Don't you worry any. Now let's forget all about this. I have brought you a present from Paris. For me? Something very nice? I hope you'll think so, said Van Alden, smiling. He took the parcel from his coat pocket and handed it to her. She unwrapped it eagerly and snapped open the case. A long-drawn, "Oh," came from her lips. Ruth Kettering loved jewels, always had done so. Dad, how... How wonderful! Rather in a class by themselves, aren't they? Said the millionaire with satisfaction. You like them, eh? Like them? Dad, they're unique. How did you get hold of them? Van Alden smiled. Ah, that's my secret. They had to be bought privately, of course. They are rather well known. See that big stone in the middle? You have heard of it, maybe. That's the historic Heart of Fire. Heart of Fire, repeated Mrs. Kettering. She had taken the stones from the case and was holding them against her breast. The millionaire watched her. He was thinking of the series of women who had worn the jewels. The heartaches, the despairs, the jealousies. Heart of Fire, like all famous stones, had left behind it a trail of tragedy and violence. Held in Ruth Kettering's assured hand, it seemed to lose its potency of evil. With her cool, equable poise, this woman of the Western world seemed a negation to tragedy or heart-burnings. Ruth returned the stones to their case. Then, jumping up, she flung her arms round her father's neck. Thank you, thank you, thank you, Dad. They are wonderful. You do give me the most marvellous presents always. That's all right, said Van Alden, patting her shoulder. You are all I have, you know, Ruthie. You will stay to dinner, won't you, Father? I don't think so. You were going out, weren't you? Yes, but I can easily put that off. Nothing very exciting. No, said Van Alden. Keep your engagement. I have got a good deal to attend to. See you tomorrow, my dear. Perhaps if I phone you, we can meet at Galbraith's. Messrs. Galbraith, Cuthbertson and Galbraith were Van Alden's London solicitors. Very well, Dad. She hesitated. I suppose this won't keep me from going to the Riviera. When are you off? On the 14th. Oh, that will be all right. These things take a long time to mature. By the way, Ruth, I shouldn't take those rubies abroad if I were you. Leave them at the bank. Mrs. Kettering nodded. We don't want to have you robbed and murdered for the sake of Heart of Fire, said the millionaire jocosely. And yet you carried it about in your pocket, Luce, retorted his daughter, smiling. Yes. Some hesitation caught her attention. What is it, Dad? Nothing. Smiled. Thinking of a little adventure of mine in Paris. An adventure? Yes, the night I bought these things. He made a gesture towards the jewel case. Oh, do tell me. Nothing to tell, Ruthie. Some Apache fellows got a bit fresh and I shot at them and they got off. That's all. She looked at him with some pride. You're a tough proposition, Dad. You bet I am, Ruthie. He kissed her affectionately and departed. On arriving back at the Savoy, he gave a curt order to Knighton. Get hold of a man called Goby. You'll find his address in my private book. He's to be here tomorrow morning at 9:30. Yes, sir. I also want to see Mr. Kettering. Run him to earth for me if you can. Try his club, at any rate, get hold of him somehow, and arrange for me to see him here tomorrow morning. Better make it latish, about 12. His sort aren't early risers. The secretary nodded in comprehension of these instructions. Van Alden gave himself into the hands of his valet. His bath was prepared, and as he lay luxuriating in the hot water, his mind went back over the conversation with his daughter. On the whole, he was well satisfied. His keen mind had long since accepted the fact that divorce was the only possible way out. Ruth had agreed to the proposed solution with more readiness than he had hoped for. Yet, in spite of her acquiescence, he was left with a vague sense of uneasiness. Something about her manner, he felt, had not been quite natural. He frowned to himself. Maybe I'm fanciful, he muttered, and yet, I bet there's something she has not told me. Dave, a useful gentleman. Rufus Van Alden had just finished the sparse breakfast of coffee and dry toast, which was all he ever allowed himself, when Knighton entered the room. Mr. Goby is below, sir, waiting to see you. The millionaire glanced at the clock. It was just 9:30. All right, he said curtly. He can come up. A minute or two later, Mr. Goby entered the room. He was a small, elderly man, shabbily dressed, with eyes that looked carefully all round the room, and never at the person he was addressing. Good morning, Goby, said the millionaire. Take a chair. Thank you, Mr. Van Alden. Mr. Goby sat down with his hands on his knees and gazed earnestly at the radiator. I have got a job for you. Yes, Mr. Van Alden. My daughter is married to the Hon. Derek Kettering, as you may perhaps know. Mr. Goby transferred his gaze from the radiator to the left-hand drawer of the desk and permitted a deprecating smile to pass over his face. Mr. Goby knew a great many things, but he always hated to admit the fact. By my advice, she is about to file a petition for divorce. That, of course, is a solicitor's business, but for private reasons, I want the fullest and most complete information. Mr. Goby looked at the cornice and murmured, "About Mr. Kettering." "About Mr. Kettering." "Very good, sir." Mr. Goby rose to his feet. "When will you have it ready for me? Are you in a hurry, sir?" "I'm always in a hurry," said the millionaire. Mr. Goby smiled understandingly at the fender. "Shall we say 2 o'clock this afternoon, sir?" he asked. "Excellent," approved the other. "Good morning, Goby." "Good morning, Mr. Van Alden." "That's a very useful man," said the millionaire as Goby went out and his secretary came in. "In his own line he's a specialist." "What is his line?" "Information. Give him 24 hours, and he would lay the private life of the Archbishop of Canterbury bare for you." "A useful sort of chap," said Knighton with a smile. "He has been useful to me once or twice," said Van Alden. "Now then, Knighton, I'm ready for work." The next few hours saw a vast quantity of business rapidly transacted. It was 12:30 when the telephone bell rang, and Mr. Van Alden was informed that Mr. Kettering had called. Knighton looked at Van Alden and interpreted his brief nod. "Ask Mr. Kettering to come up, please." The secretary gathered up his papers and departed. He and the visitor passed each other in the doorway, and Derek Kettering stood aside to let the other go out. Then he came in, shutting the door behind him. "Good morning, sir. You are very anxious to see me, I hear." The lazy voice, with its slightly ironic inflection, roused memories in Van Alden. There was charm in it. There had always been charm in it. He looked piercingly at his son-in-law. Derek Kettering was 34, lean of build, with a dark, narrow face which had even now something indescribably boyish in it. "Come in," said Van Alden curtly. Sit down." Kettering flung himself lightly into an armchair. He looked at his father-in-law with a kind of tolerant amusement. "Not seen you for a long time, sir," he remarked pleasantly. "About 2 years, I should say. Seen Ruth yet?" "I saw her last night," said Van Alden. "Looking very fit, isn't she?" said the other lightly. "I didn't know you had had much opportunity of judging," said Van Alden dryly. Derek Kettering raised his eyebrows. "Oh, we sometimes meet at the same nightclub, you know," he said airily. "I am not going to beat about the bush," Van Alden said curtly. "I have advised Ruth to file a petition for divorce." Derek Kettering seemed unmoved. "How drastic," he murmured. "Do you mind if I smoke, sir?" He lit a cigarette and puffed out a cloud of smoke as he added nonchalantly, "And what did Ruth say?" "Ruth proposes to take my advice," said her father. "Does she really? Is that all you have got to say?" demanded Van Alden sharply. Kettering flicked his ash into the grate. "I think, you know," he said with a detached air, "that she's making a great mistake." "From your point of view, she doubtless is," said Van Alden grimly. "Oh, come now," said the other. "Don't let's be personal." "I really wasn't thinking of myself at the moment. I was thinking of Ruth. You know my poor old governor really can't last much longer. All the doctors say so. Ruth had better give it a couple more years, then I shall be Lord Leconbury, and she can be Chatelaine of Leconbury, which is what she married me for." "I won't have any of your darned impudence," roared Van Alden. Derek Kettering smiled at him quite unmoved. "I agree with you. It's an obsolete idea," he said. "There's nothing in a title nowadays. Still, Leconbury is a very fine old place, and, after all, we are one of the oldest families in England. It will be very annoying for Ruth if she divorces me to find me marrying again, and some other woman queening it at Leconbury instead of her." "I am serious, young man," said Van Alden. "Oh, so am I," said Kettering. "I am in very low water F financially. It will put me in a nasty hole if Ruth divorces me, and, after all, if she has stood it for 10 years, why not stand it a little longer? I give you my word of honour that the old man can't possibly last out another 18 months, and, as I said before, it's a pity Ruth shouldn't get what she married me for." "You suggest that my daughter married you for your title and position?" Derek Kettering laughed, a laugh that was not all amusement. "You don't think it was a question of a love match?" he asked. "I know," said Van Alden slowly, "that you spoke very differently in Paris 10 years ago." "Did I? Perhaps I did." Ruth was very beautiful, you know, rather like an angel or a saint, or something that had stepped down from a niche in a church. I had fine ideas, I remember, of turning over a new leaf, of settling down and living up to the highest traditions of English home life, with a beautiful wife who loved me. He laughed again, rather more discordantly. "But you don't believe that, I suppose?" he said. "I have no doubt at all that you married Ruth for her money," said Van Alden unemotionally. "And that she married me for love?" asked the other ironically. "Certainly," said Van Alden. Derek Kettering stared at him for a minute or two, then he nodded reflectively. "I see you believe that," he said. "So did I at the time. I can assure you, my dear father-in-law, I was very soon undeceived." "I don't know what you are getting at," said Van Alden, "and I don't care. You have treated Ruth darned badly." "Oh, I have," agreed Kettering lightly, "but she's tough, you know. She's your daughter. Underneath the pink and white softness of her, she's as hard as granite. You have always been known as a hard man, so I have been told, but Ruth is harder than you are. You, at any rate, love one person better than yourself. Ruth never has and never will." "That is enough," said Van Alden. "I asked you here so that I could tell you fair and square what I meant to do. My girl has got to have some happiness, and remember this, I am behind her." Derek Kettering got up and stood by the mantelpiece. He tossed away his cigarette. When he spoke, his voice was very quiet. "What exactly do you mean by that, I wonder?" he said. "I mean," said Van Alden, "that you had better not try to defend the case." "Oh," said Kettering. "Is that a threat?" "You can take it any way you please," said Van Alden. Kettering drew a chair up to the table. He sat down, fronting the millionaire. "And supposing," he said softly, "that just for argument's sake I did defend the case?" Van Alden shrugged his shoulders. "You have not got a leg to stand upon, you young fool. Ask your solicitors, they will soon tell you. Your conduct has been notorious, the talk of London. Ruth has been kicking up a row about Mirel, I suppose. Very foolish of her. I don't interfere with her friends." "What do you mean?" said Van Alden sharply. Derek Kettering laughed. "I see you don't know everything, sir," he said. "You are, perhaps naturally, prejudiced." He took up his hat and stick and moved towards the door. "Giving advice is not much in my line." He delivered his final thrust. "But, in this case, I should advise most strongly perfect frankness between father and daughter." He passed quickly out of the room and shut the door behind him just as the millionaire sprang up. "Now what the hell did he mean by that?" said Van Alden as he sank back into his chair again. All his uneasiness returned in full force. There was something here that he had not yet got to the bottom of. The telephone was by his elbow, he seized it and asked for the number of his daughter's house. "Hello, hello, is that Mayfair 892-7, Mrs. Kettering in?" "Oh, she's out, is she?" "Yes, out to lunch." "What time will she be in? You don't know?" "Oh, very good, no, there's no message." He slammed the receiver down again angrily. At 2 o'clock he was pacing the floor of his room, waiting expectantly for Goby. The latter was ushered in at 10 minutes past 2. "Well?" barked the millionaire sharply. But little Mr. Goby was not to be hurried. He sat down at the table, produced a very shabby pocketbook, and proceeded to read from it in a monotonous voice. The millionaire listened attentively, with an increasing satisfaction. Goby came to a full stop and looked attentively at the wastepaper basket. Said Van Alden. "That seems pretty definite. The case will go through like winking. The hotel evidence is all right, I suppose?" "Cast iron," said Mr. Goby, and looked malevolently at a gilt armchair. "And financially he's in very low water. He's trying to raise a loan now, you say, has already raised practically all he can upon his expectations from his father. Once the news of the divorce gets about, he won't be able to raise another cent, and not only that, his obligations can be bought up, and pressure can be put upon him from that quarter. We have got him, Goby, we have got him in a cleft stick." He hit the table a bang with his fist. His face was grim and triumphant. "The information," said Mr. Goby in a thin voice, "seems satisfactory." "I have got to go round to Curzon Street now," said the millionaire. "I am much obliged to you, Goby. You are the goods all right." A pale smile of gratification showed itself on the little man's face. "Thank you, Mr. Van Alden," he said. "I try to do my best." Van Alden did not go direct to Curzon Street. He went first to the city, where he had 2 interviews which added to his satisfaction. From there he took the tube to Down Street. As he was walking along Curzon Street, a figure came out of number C, W8, pressed it, and turned up the street towards him so that they passed each other on the pavement. For a moment the millionaire had fancied it might be Derek Kettering himself. The height and build were not unlike. But as they came face to face, he saw that the man was a stranger to him. At least, no, not a stranger. His face awoke some call of recognition in the millionaire's mind, and it was associated definitely with something unpleasant. He cudgelled his brains in vain, but the thing eluded him. He went on, shaking his head irritably. He hated to be baffled. Ruth Kettering was clearly expecting him. She ran to him and kissed him when he entered. "Well, Dad, how are things going?" "Very well," said Van Alden, "but I've got a word or two to say to you, Ruth." Almost insensibly he felt the change in her. Something shrewd and watchful replaced the impulsiveness of her greeting. She sat down in a big armchair. "Well, Dad?" she asked. "What is it?" "I saw your husband this morning," said Van Alden. "You saw Derek?" "I did. He said a lot of things, most of which were darned cheek. Just as he was leaving, he said something that I didn't understand. He advised me to be sure that there was perfect frankness between father and daughter." "What did he mean by that, Ruthie?" Mrs. Kettering moved a little in her chair. I don't know, Dad." "How should I?" "Of course you know," said Van Alden. "He said something else, about his having his friends and not interfering with yours. What did he mean by that?" "I don't know," said Ruth Kettering again. Van Alden sat down. His mouth set itself in a grim line. "Here, Ruth, I am not going into this with my eyes closed. I am not at all sure that that husband of yours doesn't mean to make trouble. Now, he can't do it, I am sure of that. I have got the means to silence him, to shut his mouth for good and all, but I have got to know if there's any need to use those means." "What did he mean by your having your own friends?" Mrs. Kettering shrugged her shoulders. "I have got lots of friends," she said uncertainly. "I don't know what he meant, I'm sure." "You do," said Van Alden. He was speaking now as he might have spoken to a business adversary. "I will put it plainer. Who is the man? What man? The man. That's what Derek was driving at. Some special man who is a friend of yours. You needn't worry, honey. I know there is nothing in it, but we have got to look at everything as it might appear to the court. They can twist these things about a good deal, you know. I want to know who the man is, and just how friendly you have been with him." Ruth didn't answer. Her hands were kneading themselves together in intense, nervous absorption. "Come, honey," said Van Alden in a softer voice. "Don't be afraid of your old dad. I was not too harsh, was I, even that time in Paris? By gosh!" He stopped, thunderstruck. "That's who it was," he murmured to himself. "I thought I knew his face." "What are you talking about, Dad? I don't understand." The millionaire strode across to her and took her firmly by the wrist. "See here, Ruth, have you been seeing that fellow again?" "What fellow?" "The one we had all that fuss about years ago. You know who I mean well enough." "You mean—" she hesitated. "You mean the Comte de la Roche?" "Comte de la Roche," snorted Van Alden. "I told you at the time that the man was no better than a swindler. You had entangled yourself with him then very deeply, but I got you out of his clutches." "Yes, you did," said Ruth bitterly. "And I married Derek Kettering." "You wanted to," said the millionaire sharply. She shrugged her shoulders. "And now," said Van Alden slowly, "you have been seeing him again after all I told you. He has been in the house today. I met him outside and couldn't place him for the moment." Ruth Kettering had recovered her composure. "I want to tell you one thing, Dad. You are wrong about Armand, the Comte de la Roche, I mean. Oh, I know there were several regrettable incidents in his youth. He has told me about them, but, well, he has cared for me always. It broke his heart when you parted us in Paris, and now—" She was interrupted by the snort of indignation her father gave. "So, you fell for that stuff, did you? You, a daughter of mine, my God." He threw up his hands. "That women can be such darned fools." 6. Mireille. Derek Kettering emerged from Van Alden's suite so precipitately that he collided with a lady passing across the corridor. He apologized. and she accepted his apologies with a smiling reassurance and passed on, leaving with him a pleasant impression of a soothing personality and rather fine grey eyes. For all his nonchalance, his interview with his father-in-law had shaken him more than he cared to show. He had a solitary lunch, and after it, frowning to himself a little, he went around to the sumptuous flat that housed the lady known as Miel. A trim Frenchwoman received him with smiles. "But enter then, monsieur. Madame reposes herself." He was ushered into the long room with its eastern setting which he knew so well. Mireille was lying on the divan, supported by an incredible number of cushions, all in varying shades of amber, to harmonize with the yellow ochre of her complexion. The dancer was a beautifully made woman, and if her face, beneath its mask of yellow, was in truth somewhat haggard, it had a bizarre charm of its own, and her orange lips smiled invitingly at Derek Kettering. He kissed her, and flung himself into a chair. "What have you been doing with yourself? Just got up, I suppose?" The orange mouth widened into a long smile. "No," said the dancer. "I have been at work." She flung out a long, pale hand towards the piano, which was littered with untidy music scores. "Ambrose has been here. He has been playing me, the new opera." Kettering nodded without paying much attention. He was profoundly uninterested in Claude Ambrose and the latter's operatic setting of Ibsen's Peer Gynt. So was Mireille, for that matter, regarding it merely as a unique opportunity for her own presentation as Anitra. "It is a marvellous dance," she murmured. "I shall put all the passion of the desert into it. I shall dance hung over with jewels. Ah, and, by the way, mon ami, there is a pearl that I saw yesterday in Bond Street, a black pearl." She paused, looking at him invitingly. "My dear girl," said Kettering, "it's no use talking of black pearls to me. At the present minute, as far as I'm concerned, the fat is in the fire." She was quick to respond to his tone. She sat up, her big black eyes widening. "What is that you say, Derek? What has happened?" "My esteemed father-in-law," said Kettering, "is preparing to go off the deep end." "Eh?" "In other words, he wants Ruth to divorce me." "How stupid," said Mireille. "Why should she want to divorce you?" Derek Kettering grinned. "Mainly because of you, chérie," he said. Mireille shrugged her shoulders. "That is foolish," she observed in a matter-of-fact voice. "Very foolish," agreed Derek. "What are you going to do about it?" demanded Mireille. "My dear girl, what can I do? On the one side, the man with unlimited money. On the other side, the man with unlimited debts. There is no question as to who will come out on top. They are extraordinary, these Americans," commented Mireille. "It is not as though your wife were fond of you." "Well," said Derek, "what are we going to do about it?" She looked at him inquiringly. He came over and took both her hands in his. "Are you going to stick to me? What do you mean, after?" "Yes," said Kettering. "After, when the creditors come down like wolves on the fold. I am damned fond of you, Mireille. Are you going to let me down?" She pulled her hands away from him. "You know I adore you, Derek." He caught the note of evasion in her voice. "So that's that, is it? The rats will leave the sinking ship." "Ah, Derek, out with it," he said violently. "You will fling me over, is that it?" She shrugged her shoulders. "I am fond of you, mon ami. Indeed, I am fond of you. You are very charming, un beau garçon. But ce n'est pas pratique. You are a rich man's luxury, eh? Is that it? If you like to put it that way." She leaned back on the cushions, her head flung back. "All the same, I am fond of you, Derek." He went over to the window and stood there some time looking out, with his back to her. Presently the dancer raised herself on her elbow and stared at him curiously. "What are you thinking of, mon ami?" He grinned at her over his shoulder, a curious grin that made her vaguely uneasy. "As it happened, I was thinking of a woman, my dear." "A woman, eh?" Mireille pounced on something that she could understand. "You are thinking of some other woman, is that it?" "Oh, you needn't worry, it is purely a fancy portrait." "Portrait of a lady with grey eyes," Mireille said sharply. "When did you meet her?" Derek Kettering laughed, and his laughter had a mocking, ironical sound. "I ran into the lady in the corridor of the Savoy Hotel." "Well, what did she say?" "As far as I can remember, I said, 'I beg your pardon,' and she said, 'It doesn't matter,' or words to that effect." "And then?" persisted the dancer. Kettering shrugged his shoulders. "And then, nothing. That was the end of the incident. "I don't understand a word of what you are talking about," declared the dancer. "Portrait of a lady with grey eyes," murmured Derek reflectively. "Just as well I am never likely to meet her again." "Why? She might bring me bad luck. Women do." Morel slipped quickly from her couch and came across to him, laying one long, snake-like arm round his neck. "You are foolish, Derek," she murmured. "You are very foolish. You are beau garçon, and I adore you, but I am not made to be poor. No, decidedly I am not made to be poor. Now listen to me. Everything is very simple. You must make it up with your wife." "I'm afraid that's not going to be actually in the sphere of practical politics," said Derek dryly. "How do you say?" "I do not understand." "Van Alden, my dear, is not taking any. He is the kind of man who makes up his mind and sticks to it." "I have heard of him," nodded the dancer. "He is very rich, is he not? Almost the richest man in America. A few days ago, in Paris, he bought the most wonderful ruby in the world. Heart of Fire it is called." Kettering did not answer. The dancer went on musingly, "It is a wonderful stone, a stone that should belong to a woman like me. I love jewels, Derek. They say something to me. Ah, to wear a ruby like Heart of Fire." She gave a little sigh, and then became practical once more. "You don't understand these things, Derek. You are only a man. Van Alden will give these rubies to his daughter, I suppose. Is she his only child?" "Yes. Then, when he dies, she will inherit all his money. She will be a rich woman." "She is a rich woman already," said Kettering dryly. "He settled a couple of millions on her at her marriage." "A couple of millions? But that is immense. And if she died suddenly, eh? That would all come to you." "As things stand at present," said Kettering slowly, "it would. As far as I know, she has not made a will." "Mon Dieu," said the dancer. "If she were to die, what a solution that would be!" There was a moment's pause, and then Derek Kettering laughed outright. "I like your simple, practical mind, Morel, but I am afraid what you desire won't come to pass. My wife is an extremely healthy person." "Eh bien," said Morel, "there are accidents." He looked at her sharply, but did not answer. She went on, "But you are right, mon ami, we must not dwell on possibilities. See now, my little Derek, there must be no more talk of this divorce. Your wife must give up the idea." "And if she won't?" The dancer's eyes narrowed to slits. "I think she will, my friend. She is one of those who would not like the publicity. There are one or two pretty stories that she would not like her friends to read in the newspapers." "What do you mean?" asked Kettering sharply. Morel laughed, her head thrown back. "Parbleu! I mean the gentleman who calls himself the Comte de la Roche. I know all about him. I am Parisienne, you remember." "He was her lover before she married you, was he not?" Kettering took her sharply by the shoulders. "That is a damned lie," he said, "and please remember that, after all, you are speaking of my wife." Morel was a little sobered. "You are extraordinary, you English," she complained. "All the same, I dare say that you may be right. The Americans are so cold, are they not? But you will permit me to say, mon ami, that she was in love with him before she married you, and her father stepped in and sent the compteur about his business. And the little mademoiselle, she wept many tears. But she obeyed. Still, you must know as well as I do, Derek, that it is a very different story now. She sees him nearly every day, and on the 14th she goes to Paris to meet him." "How do you know all this?" demanded Kettering. "Me? I have friends in Paris, my dear Derek, who know the Comte intimately. It is all arranged. She is going to the Riviera, so she says, but in reality the Comte meets her in Paris and— "Who knows? Yes, you can take my word for it, it is all arranged." Derek Kettering stood motionless. "You see," purred the dancer, "if you are clever, you have her in the hollow of your hand. You can make things very awkward for her." "Oh, for God's sake, be quiet," cried Kettering. "Shut your cursed mouth." Morel flung herself down again on the divan with a laugh. Kettering caught up his hat and coat and left the flat, banging the door violently. And still the dancer sat on the divan and laughed softly to herself. She was not displeased with her work.